Hi, I'm Marcia Lehman, and I'm a Knox County Master Gardener. Today we're talking about the fourth P in the 5 Ps for growing vegetables in containers. And the fourth P is Pamper. Now if you recall, on March 1st, I seeded in this container some carrots. I sprinkled the seed around, and then we put just a light layer of soil mix on top. And unfortunately, carrots take a long time to germinate. Easily 14 days, often 21 days. And so in the planting P, I said I'm going to put some radishes in here because they sprout faster, and then I have a reminder that yes, in fact, I planted something in here. And you can barely see them, but the 4 that I planted, and I actually dropped 2 seeds in each hole, so I've got 2 coming up here, 2 coming up here, 1 and 1. They are just 1/2 inch tall, and it took them 8 days to sprout. That's a little slow for radishes, but what happened was that between March 1st and today, which is the 13th, and as I say, they took 7 days to sprout. So on March 8th, I had the first sprouts just popping out of the ground. But between planting and when they popped, this container was in the garage. Obviously, I'm not going to keep this in the house, but it was in the garage because we had overnight temperatures that were down in the mid-20s. So the garage was maybe 45 degrees, well above freezing, but at those temperatures, it took 7 or 8 days for these radish seeds to germinate, and the carrots are taking their good old time, which is just what carrots do. So we're not going to wait any longer because I've got something sprouted. Now, you may also decide, you may be sowing lettuce. I would suggest you do that from seed, just like we did carrots and radishes. You can do beets easily from seed. If you happen to buy a transplant, a little plant in a pot of, say, broccoli, or some other spring vegetable that you really like and you bought them in a little pot already started, the key in P number 4, pampering, is think about how deep your roots are. You can play it safe and water this pot until water comes out the bottom. But what's really important is that we get water at least as deep as the roots. So with these radishes that are about 1/2 inch tall, their roots may be 1 to 1.5 inches deep. So the easiest way to test is the soil moist is this thing. This is your best moisture meter. And you stick it down in, and yeah, my tip comes out. It's slightly moist. It could use a little watering, but it doesn't need a lot of watering. So again, you can play it safe and water it until water comes out the bottom. But the real key is, are you getting water to where the roots are? And obviously, as your plant grows, radishes aren't going to get very deep. So if you got the first 2 or 3 inches moist in this pot for radishes, that would be great. But if you're growing a broccoli or a head lettuce or something that's going to get longer roots, then you really do want to water it until it comes out the bottom. So pampering depends a lot on what is the stage of the plant and what is the depth of the root. So when the plants are little and the roots are near the top, you cannot let this dry out. So it can be a sunny day and the surface, the top inch, will dry out quickly and you may need to water twice a day. It could be a breezy day and it will also cause the moisture in the top layer to evaporate relatively quickly. And if it's a sunny, breezy day, you really need to be on the watch. So, how do we water? Let's talk about watering first. If you have one of these, this is great for washing your car, or for those of us who have bigger gardens, it's great for spraying aphids off of plants if you have an aphid infestation. But it's really not very good for watering at this stage when the carrot seeds are not yet up and my radishes are really small. Why is that? Well, even though it says gentle shower, that is still too strong and you are likely to splash a lot of the mix out of the pot, disturb the little carrot seeds that might be just starting to germinate, and then you blast them away. And as I say, even these little radishes could get blasted away. Sometimes there's a mist setting, but then you're going to have to stand here for a long time because what comes out of the mist is just that. So this is not really a particularly good tool. Again, as your plants get bigger, you can use a watering can and hand water them. And the nice thing is most watering cans have a head on them that have lots of holes, so it comes out as kind of a gentle shower. A watering wand is my favorite, and I would recommend if you have a lot of pots that you are going to have to be watering. And it too has a head that must have 200 holes in the middle. So even though you attach this end to a hose, having all these little heads here forces the water to come out more like a shower. And the key is we want to be close and we want to water the soil. We do not want to get the plants wet in the process. And that can be a little bit of a challenge in a pot. The bigger the pot gets, the easier it is to come in with one of these and come around and get the soil moist. When I've got little plants like the carrots that have not yet sprouted, because it's only 2 weeks, they could take them another week, or the radishes that are just up, I like to take a water bottle. And I have several of these. This one has several holes punched in the top, and I can just give it a light sprinkle. This one has just a single hole in the top, and I actually prefer this because I can just give it a light. But at the same time, what's nice about the water bottle, you know, they crinkle. I can make a little squirt gun out of it like that. So you don't want to squeeze it real hard, but it gives you complete control. You can water as lightly or as hard as you want. And this is 1 pint, 16 ounces. That is probably more than enough to get moisture down the top 2 inches, which is where my roots are right now. So the nice thing about using this is you have a meter for how much water you're using. 16 ounces is plenty to get this moist. This is how I've been keeping it moist, hoping that these carrots will eventually germinate. And I have some other little plants that I'm starting indoors. And since they're very small, I just lightly do that. You don't have, I mean, this is 2 gallons, so you're going to say, oh, I need to use 1/8 of that or 1/16 of that. So you can use a 16-ounce water bottle. If you've got a 32-ounce water bottle, that will come in handy as these plants get bigger or as you put bigger plants in here. And of course, you could do the same thing with a 2-liter soda bottle. But in the beginning, when your plants are really small, 1 pint is probably all you need. And you can just, and then you can also keep track that over the course of a day, I've added a pint of water to this plant. And if it's still drying out because it's sunny or breezy, well then the next day you say, well, you know, maybe I need 1.5, or maybe I need 2 of these. And again, as the plants get bigger, you will be using more water. And at some point, if you're growing something larger, like a broccoli or a head lettuce, you would actually probably want to use this and water it until water starts to come out the drain holes that you put in the bottom of your pot. Now, the second part of pampering is fertilizing. And even though these radishes are up, it is still too soon to fertilize. Remember that we added just a little bit of fertilizer into the mix when we filled the pot. There's enough fertilizer in here to get these things started. And while these look like they have leaves, these are not true leaves. These are the halves of the seed that are the first things to open up and to start the photosynthesis process. But they are called cotyledons. They're not true leaves. The next leaves that open up will actually look like radish leaves. And then by the time you have the second set of true leaves, you will want to start to fertilize. Now, even with 2 sets of true leaves, these are still not going to be very big. But that's about the point where you need to start to add more fertilizer. And this time, you're going to be doing it when you water. Not every time, but probably once a week. Again, you want to pick your fertilizer. And for containers, it really is best if it is a water-soluble fertilizer, something you can mix in water. Trying to sprinkle a dry fertilizer and then scratch it into the surface can be a challenge. It can be done, but it has to be done carefully, and it would be hard to do when I've mixed carrots and radishes together, because in trying to scratch it around, I'm likely to disturb those carrot seeds. So there may be a caveat in there that says, you know, put all of one type of plant in a container, like all radishes in one, all carrots in another, because when you mix them and they have different germination rates, you may be creating a challenge. But if you use a water-soluble, you can go, the recommendation when your plants are still really small is follow the instructions on the packaging. And if it says use 1 tablespoon or 1 scoop per gallon, what you can do is mix it in your watering can, which is 2 gallons. So make a 2-gallon solution. And in many cases, this head pops off. And then pour it from here into your bottle that you're decanting. And you can always shake it up real well. And then come back, and you would be applying fertilizer about once a week. Pick a day of the week that you'll remember. And so the other days of the week, it's just plain water. But once a week, you're giving it a half-strength fertilizer. Now, as the plants get bigger and get to 3 or 4 inches and have 5 or 6 or 7 sets of true leaves, then you can start to transition higher and go full strength on the fertilizer. But when they're really small, it's important that you go half strength. So if it says 1 scoop or 1 tablespoon per gallon, and this is 2 gallons, at half strength, that means you're going to put 1 tablespoon into 2 gallons. And maybe after a couple of weeks, you do 1.5 tablespoons in the 2 gallons. And then maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, you go to the full strength, so you would have 2 tablespoons in 2 gallons of water. That is, assuming that the instructions say 1 tablespoon per gallon is your full strength. There are some organic fertilizers that are water soluble. They're not a fine powder. And the reason I shook was that when I mix that, I find I need to shake it pretty hard, and I usually mix it up in the evening, and then I will let it sit overnight. The next morning I come back and I shake it some more, and then I start to apply it. There is the infamous, everybody knows, Miracle Grow. It's not an organic fertilizer, but sometimes in container gardening you don't have a lot of choice, and so Miracle Grow is easily dissolvable in water, easy to apply, easy to mix. Just follow the instructions, start off half strength. Your other option is to use something like a fish emulsion, which in the NPK numbers is 511. It's an emulsion. It mixes well with water. You'll have to ask yourself if you really like the smell. And you might want to think twice if you have pets, because a lot of cats and dogs are really attracted, or cats in particular, are attracted to the smell of the fish emulsion. So if you already have a problem with your cats digging in the pots, then you might want to think twice about using fish emulsion. But the point is, the points to remember here are, look at your plants, and if you've got, in this case, my radishes are 1/2 inch above ground, so I probably have 1 to 1.5 inches of root below ground, so this is the band that I need to get good and moist. If as they grow, the roots are going to get longer, or if you set something in like a broccoli, the roots of a broccoli will eventually come down nearly to the bottom and maybe out the drain holes if you're really pampering them nicely. And that's when you would need to really come back and drench this until you get water running out of the bottom of the drain holes. So for the spring veggies, if you're really into lettuce, whether it's head lettuce or leaf lettuce, some spinach and the like, Now's the time to get those pots started. I think we're past having the sub-freezing temperatures, so your germination will be faster than what I had on these radishes that I started March 1st. And we'll move on, and in a couple weeks, especially things like radishes that go from seed to maturity in about 30 days, you'll have things ready to harvest. So that's the fourth P of pampering. It focuses on water and fertilizer, and that's to keep your plants growing and make them as big and strong and healthy, because after all, you are what you eat. Thank you for joining us today.